One of the big opportunities for young professionals and millennials is networking when they're really getting started, because as the world has shifted, we've become much more interconnected, so there's a lot of opportunity there. But there's also a lot of, there's many obstacles to really being successful with it. And one of the first things I think that managers or leaders in any sales organization, I think what they need to do is understand that they can't manage people like they used to. And the reason why is because we manage numbers, right? We manage things. And when we used to live in a linear world, it was really easy to manage, right? Back in the day, we'd have our people sitting down. I was a sales manager myself. We go, okay, great. Make your 100 phone calls. Track everything. Tell me how many people you talked to. What was your success rate? What was your hang-up rate? And that's how we just managed. And if somebody wasn't successful, we go, well, make more phone calls. You coach people, right? And you interact and you engage and you develop people. And so I think the first thing that any leader of a young sales professional needs to understand is that they can't just say, do X, Y, and Z, and here's the results I expect, and if I don't see them, you've done it wrong. It's a much, again, more nonlinear world, and we have to accept that and help people walk through it. And by nonlinear, I mean that there is not as much of a direct connection between our activity and the result that comes from it. That doesn't mean there's not a connection. It's just not as easy for us to see. And I know that, especially as a sales manager or a sales leader, that's frustrating, right? But we can't let our frustrations get taken out on our people, right? We have to have the confidence that what they're doing is the right thing, and we have to coach them to make sure they're doing it right. But then we have to let the process work for itself, as opposed to just beating them up. Because if we do, they will leave, because nobody likes to get beat up these days. One of the things that I get asked a lot is, how do I coach a young professional, right? Especially we look at the millennial group, like how do I coach them in relationship building and business development and these kind of soft skill processes? One of the things I often suggest is to take a cue from the sales world, right? We're working with salespeople, but we often forget that we're salespeople ourselves. And if you talk to any good salesperson and say, what makes you successful? They go, I listen, I look for solutions, I don't dictate, but I help direct. We can do the exact same thing. So I think the coaching process really is about asking some questions, going, hey, how are things working? How are you feeling about this? What do you think's going well? What's not? Where do you want to be, right? And a lot of times as a sales leader, it's hard to ask these questions because we want to be just go do this, go do that. But if we can create that space, and that's really what I think the millennial generation is saying they want, right? And this is a broad brushstroke, but they're saying, hey, we want to be directive of our own lives, our own careers. So if we can say, what do you want? Get that response, because they're going to say, hey, I want to be successful. I want to be better at this. I want to do well. Then we can come in and say, okay, so here's the things that you need to be doing. And really what I think is important is focusing them on activities that are independent of the results. Because I mentioned before the idea of being linear and nonlinear. And we like linear because it's awesome. It's awesome to know that if I work harder, I'll get better results immediately. That's, we lift more weights, right? This is very linear. If I push harder, I can lift more weight, and that's exciting, and we like that. This world is nonlinear, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating for us as sales leaders. It's frustrating for our salespeople. It's frustrating to go, hey, I had these 3 conversations, but I don't see where the business is going to come from them because it didn't happen right away. So I think our job really is to coach them to make sure their skills are in the right place. And I do think that there are some opportunities to help build their social skills, but it's also the opportunity to say, you're doing the right stuff. Right, you're doing the right activity. Maybe let's do some more of this activity, but let's keep going along this path because it's the right one. Just like any good sports coach or any athletic coach would do. Hey, we're in the right path. Let's keep doing it. Let's adjust. Tweak this, tweak that, but let's keep going. You can do it, and that's where the cheerleading comes in. Getting back out the door and doing that activity. One of the things that trips a lot of sales leaders up is the lack of metrics, or the apparent lack of metrics in this new world, right? If we, for example, with networking, a lot of sales leaders tell people, go network, go meet people. But how do you track that? How are you successful with that? There are some very specific metrics to track, and I think that they are activity-driven versus results-driven. And there's a number of different activities you can look at. One is simple saying, how many new people have you added to your network this week? How many business cards did you get? Even though I don't think networking is transactional, we do need to bring people into it. So it's just saying, hey, have you met 5 new people this week? The idea of having one-on-one conversations with people. Hey, how many times have you sat down with a networking partner? Did you have your 3 cups of coffee this week? Did you have 2 phone conversations this week just to catch up with somebody? I love the idea of, especially for new professionals, having a tickler file where it could be as simple as something in Outlook, right? A reminder that pops up, or Salesforce, or whatever tools they're using, that, hey, every 3 months, I'm going to just reach out to somebody and say hello, right? Or I'm going to give them a call, or I'm going to go look them up on social media. But looking at some of those activity metrics over time, here's the thing, if you're meeting 3 new people every week, or having, let's say, 3 cups of coffee with a networking partner every week, that's 150 cups of coffee, right? One Starbucks likes that. But if you think about it, from those 150 conversations, is something good going to happen? Absolutely. I don't know from which one, right? And I don't know in what form, but I know that you're going to get some other introductions. You're going to get some other opportunities that are going to come from you. You might have some information that's shared that you would never have had before. So what sales leaders need to do is really track that activity for their people. Now, if the activity is not happening, then they can, again, help motivate, see if there's any challenge or problem that's stopping them from getting out there. But if they're tracking that activity every week, that's going to add up, that's going to build. It's the new version of tracking their phone calls. One of the very specific things that experienced professionals can teach to the new generation, the millennials who are coming up, is the power of having a system around their networking, around their relationships. A big mistake that is often made is people think that millennials, they're like, oh, they grew up with social media, they grew up on Facebook, they get all that interaction, they're comfortable with it, they like doing it. We don't have to teach them at all. It couldn't be farther from the truth. And the reality is that millennials and the next generation are very comfortable with the technology, but that was hanging out with their friends. When we put them into a business environment, they have very little experience in business communication. They have very little experience interacting with prospects and clients. It's a new world. And so sure, it'd be like saying, well, if somebody grew up using the phone all the time, of course they're going to go into the business world and be comfortable talking to prospective clients on the phone. It doesn't work that way. So one of the things you can do is really help them understand how to use these tools and create a process for good follow-up, for building these relationships over time. And I think a couple key elements of that process are having a way of being reminded to get back in touch with people, whether it's a reminder in Outlook or just in social media. LinkedIn, for example, now has a reminder system. You can be reminded every month. Reach out to this person. Fantastic. I think a big part of it is also teaching them how to follow up. What do you say? Right? What do you say when you're going to send an email to someone? What do you say if you send that social media post, or give them a phone call? Or is it appropriate at times to actually pull out old paper and pen and write a quick note? It was one of the things one of my mentors taught me, and still to this day very powerful. Even though snail mail is slow, there's nothing like getting that handwritten note. Even though I'm sure people can't read anything I write, but hey, it was the thought that counts. But giving them some structure, and again, not assuming that a young professional, because they're conversant with technology, has that structure in place. Not at all. You have to actually give them the framework to be successful. They're going to adopt it quickly because they know the technology, but you have to give them, again, that framework that they can operate in.